It's saying that we're streaming, so I think we're live now.
Okay.
Great. Hello, everybody. This is Irene speaking from James Lee Consultancy. Today, we're very lucky to have Cara from Woodbridge School, and she'll be talking to us all about the school and followed by questions and answers. So feel free to type your messages in as and when you have the questions, and we'll answer them at the end. Cara, thank you very much for coming today. Perhaps if you could introduce yourself, and we'll go through the slides. Just let me know when you want me to go to the next page. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me on to say hi from Woodbridge School. So I'm Cara Shirley. I'm the Director of Admissions at Woodbridge School, and I work alongside a lady called Abby Southwold, who's our admissions registrar. So predominantly, we're the people in the admissions team that talk to anybody that's considering Woodbridge School as an option and would like to find out a bit more about the school, a bit more about how your child or children could think about joining the school, and all about our entrance procedures and things. So we're kind of the two people that would love to talk to you about that. Apologies for the background, but like a lot of people, I am working from home in the UK. So my children are downstairs, so hopefully they don't make too much noise. And I just want to say before anything else, I hope you are all doing well, and I hope you're all safe and well, and you and your families. So I will kick off with a few slides. Apologies if some of you know some of this information, but I'm going to treat it that you don't know anything about the school. So if we move on to the first slide, please. This just tells you very briefly a little bit about the history of the school. So we are a school with a very old history. We've been around for many, many years in Woodbridge, in the surrounding area. But we like to think that we're kind of like an old school with a modern twist. You know, we've been around for a very, very long time, and we have a lot of families who have sent generations of pupils to us. So we've got some people that have sent, you know, multiple generations, and we call them old Woodbridgians. So we have a lot of old Woodbridgians, i.e. old pupils at Woodbridge, who span many, many generations and who are very near and dear to our hearts. So that just gives you a little bit of an insight into how long the school has been around. And moving on to the next slide. This just gives you a bit of an idea about what the school looks like, and you'll see that in some of the other slides. So in terms of where we are, Woodbridge School is based in Woodbridge, which is a very, very beautiful and picturesque town in Suffolk. So I, for example, live in Kesgrave, which is about a 10-minute journey from that. And we love the area, all of us that live here in the southeast of England, because we're very close to, you know, quite close to London. It's very, very easy to get in and out of the big cities and to get to airports. But actually, we're away from it. You know, it is rural. It's very, very green. The air is clean, and there's an awful lot to do in the surrounding areas. We're close to cities, but we're also close to the coast and have lots of beaches around here. As you can see, we have a lot of greenery. So the school is set in 40 acres of grounds. So if I show you the next slide, this gives you an idea about where we are. So we're in the southeast of England. So you'll see the black mark on there, which is where Woodbridge is. And Ipswich is a town about sort of 15 minutes drive away from Woodbridge. And we're very close to lots of places in the southeast as well. And there's there's 5 airports within a 2-hour kind of radius or reach of us. There's a few more as well, like Southend Airport, but that doesn't necessarily fly everywhere. So you can see that very easily you can get to the main airports. You can get to London Stansted and Gatwick and Luton, as well as Norwich has an airport as well, as I've mentioned, Southend does. And Woodbridge itself has a mainline train station. So our pupils can walk into town within about 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, which is lovely. But also within about a sort of 10-minute walk, you can get to the train station. So everything's very accessible, and it's very, very easy to get in and out of the city. So next slide. Thank you. So talking a little bit more about the schoolhouse, Woodbridge School is a co-educational, so we have male and female pupils. And as I said, we've been around for a very long time. And we have day pupils and boarding pupils. So we have pupils from age 4 upwards. And our boarding house is for pupils in year 9 and above, so age 13 and above, age 13 to 19 really is for our boarders. So next slide. Thank you. This is the boarding house. We have a very, very lovely family, and you'll see a picture of them who run the boarding house. So we've got Mr. and Mrs. Pinio, Richard and Joe Pinio, and their 2 girls who go to the school. So it's absolutely such a lovely family environment because it truly is run by a British family. And they've got 2 young girls themselves at the school, so they've always got the pupils' best interests at heart. So if you move to the next slide, please. This gives you a bit of an indication about the boarding house and where it sits within the school grounds. So at Woodbridge, we have 1 boarding house. So we have around 750 pupils at the school, of whom around 550 are at the senior school. So we have prep school students, younger students, and the senior school students from year 7 and above. And at the senior school, as I said, we've got about 550 pupils. Around 50 to 60 of those are boarding students. And we have boarding students from all over the world. You know, at the moment from China, from Hong Kong, from Turkey, from Italy, France, Germany, Africa. We've got pupils from all over. We like to keep the diversity within the boarding house because we think it gives a real array of experiences, different cultures, and we feel that it really benefits both the boarders and the day pupils. And we do also have some British boarders as well. So perhaps their family are in the military, or depending on their work environment, they need to board with us as well. So you can see from that picture that the boarding house is at the centre of the senior school. There are some boarding schools in the UK where the boarding house is on the outskirts, should we say, of the school. And equally, there are some very, very large boarding schools where they have multiple boarding houses. And for some families, that will be great. Some boarders are looking for very large schools, whereas we have 1 boarding house of around 50 to 60 pupils that's got a very, very nice family atmosphere. So it's really, but we find that the boarders really settle in that way and are very well taken care of by the family there. So I've mentioned how close, you know, walking distance is into the town. This is Richard and Joe, who are absolutely lovely. And Richard attended the school many years ago as well, and they've just returned fairly recently to the area. So that's the Pinio family. So that's the housemaster and housemistress who, along with a team of medical staff and others, look after all of our boarders very, very well in the house. So next slide, please. So a few sort of key points about the school, really. As I've mentioned, we are 1 very diverse boarding house at Woodbridge. It's run by a British family, which we find a lot of boarding families like because they like to think that it's a home away from home for their children. I'm a mother myself, so I certainly want that for my children. It's at the heart of the senior school, so it's not as though the boarders are so distinct and kept separate from the day pupils. They're very much integrated, both in terms of physicality, you know, where they are located in the school, but also in terms of how they're treated as well. At Woodbridge School, academic success is hugely important, and our results sort of speak for themselves in terms of how we do academically. You know, we've been around a number of years for very good reason, but equally pastoral care is so important to us at Woodbridge, and that does make us stand out in some ways from other boarding schools. We think the 2 go hand in hand, and our current head is Miss Shona Norman. And Miss Norman has been at the school for around 17 years now. So she started off as an English teacher and did various other roles, and was more recently the deputy head pastoral. So we have a deputy head academic and a deputy head pastoral. And she was the deputy head pastoral. So she is expertly placed, having worked at the school for so many years, to now be our head. And she's the first female head in all this time. So we are so glad to have her. She's amazing, and she does her job very, very well, and always with the best interest of the pupils, particularly given her pastoral background. So at Woodbridge, we don't have any exit weekends other than the May bank holiday, but boarders can stay during that time if they'd wish to, because one question that families have is how often, you know, would the pupils have to leave. We also have no Saturday school, and I think that's important because we make sure that the boarders aren't overwhelmed, and that they have time to spend time with British pupils and pupils from all over the world and do some fun activities, some educational activities. And there's a very packed activity schedule for the boarders each and every weekend. Next slide, please. There's always lots going on. So we have very good academic results, and following on from this, I'm happy to send a lot of our information, our prospectus and our exam results information through to the consultancy so that they can forward that on to you if you would like. There's also a medical centre in the actual boarding house itself. Not all boarding schools can say they have a nurse and medically trained staff within the actual boarding house itself. We can say that because we are a reasonably small school, which a lot of families find reassurance in. And our staff are mental health trained, so they are not just interested in physically if pupils, if your children are being well looked after, and if they're being taken care of, if they have an injury or have any medical conditions. We're also very, very interested in pupils' mental health, particularly when they're travelling to another country and when they're taking on the challenges of being taught in another language, for example. We have a beautiful chapel that anybody of any faith can use to go and even just to find some peace and some quiet time. So if you have a look at our virtual tour, which I'll mention later, you'll see some pictures of our beautiful chapel. We have the Fitzgerald Society, so that is to prepare people to go to Oxbridge, for example. So many of our pupils go on to do great things, and sometimes that does involve going on to very reputable universities in the United Kingdom, which we're quite known for. And there's a particular society, a particular group that's set up to prepare pupils for that. We have very reasonable fees, and the important thing there is that, within reason, they are all inclusive. So it includes all of their accommodation, all of their meals, it includes all of the English as an additional language, EAL lessons and provision. We don't make additional charges for that like some schools do. So yes, there might be some activities that you pay separately for, dependent on your child. For the most part, the fees that you see are what you pay. And then I think we've got a few slides following on from this, just with some photographs of the school. So we can just flick through some of these. This is just some of our pupils, just to demonstrate some of the bedroom accommodation, for example. In terms of bedroom facilities, obviously we'd have that conversation with people individually, but sometimes our boarders share in a room of 2. Sometimes they share in a room of 4. Some pupils want their own space in an ensuite or something. Others actually want to share and live with other pupils, sometimes British, sometimes from all over the world. So we have, as you'd expect, games rooms and communal areas. We have a lovely kitchen that's being renovated. So this gives you a bit of a look into the boarding house. So yeah, just some of our lovely pupils. The bathroom facilities have been very recently renovated, for example, in the last year. And this just gives you an idea about how cosy our boarding house is. All the boarders get to know each other really, really well and integrate really well with the day pupils because of the type of school we are and how it works with the boarders. This is just some of our lovely boarders. And the Sixth Form Centre is a very, very modern building that was done in the last few years. So typically pupils in the United Kingdom will study for GCSEs and then we'll do A-levels. And we typically do sort of 3 or 4 A-levels between the ages of sort of 16 and 18, 19. And this is for those pupils that are doing A-levels. So it's a very, very nice, large, very open and airy space, basically. So we can move on from that. We have lots and lots of sporting facilities, and we are particularly, well known for sports and music, art. And the best thing to do is, if you're even remotely considering Woodbridge School as an option, is just to get in touch with us, because we would love to have an individual conversation with you, dependent on your family needs and what your child or children are interested in. At Woodbridge School, we very much like to think that there is no one size fits all. And when people ask us, what are you looking for in a Woodbridge School pupil? The answer really is somebody that's really willing to be courageous, try new things, that's willing to get involved, and that wants to explore and find what's best for them. It's not a one size fits all education. It never should be, and it certainly isn't at Woodbridge School. So anybody that's interested and wants to find out more about our particular sports facilities and grounds, what kind of clubs we have, any GCSE and A-level options, I would advise you to get in touch with us, because we'd have that one-on-one conversation with you to make sure it was the best fit. We would never encourage people to come to Woodbridge School unless it was the best fit for the family as well as the school. So we can go on from that slide. This just shows you Seckford Theatre. So we have a very beautiful theatre on site. As I said, it has a capacity of 300, and we're very, very lucky to have hosted the Royal Shakespeare Company, Royal Ballet, and several shows are put on every year, as you can imagine, in the theatre. So that's a really, really lovely space on campus. And moving on. Okay, so I just wanted to really give you a bit of an insight into Woodbridge. So, you know, where we are, what makes us a little bit different or a little bit unique. And part of that is our real strong connection with pastoral care and what's in the best interest of each individual pupil. So it's very much kind of one-on-one care. Another thing, obviously, is the boarding house itself compared to a lot of others, the size of it and where it's located on campus, and how diverse, you know, that boarding house is. When it comes to actually applying to Woodbridge School or considering Woodbridge School, the way our process works is obviously we would have a conversation with you first and check what you're interested in and what you might be looking for to see if it is the right fit or not. And we would always be honest and open about that. If you're asking about clubs and facilities, we'll always let you know what we have got and anything we possibly haven't got, but hopefully that wouldn't be the case. So in terms of overseas applications, Abby and myself would speak with you, you know, as a family. And if you did decide that Woodbridge School might be the place for the family or for your child or children, then you would complete the registration form. And there's a registration fee of £100 for overseas applicants. What that then enables is for us to fully consider the application, for us to arrange an interview with the head, so that's Miss Norman. Very friendly interview. Sometimes pupils can get nervous, but it's really just a chat, you know, to check what their interests are, why they're interested in Woodbridge, and what, you know, we could offer them. And then the way that we do our assessments on entry is something called a Cat 4 test. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. A Cat 4 test basically tests numerous things, including a little bit of English and maths, and just how the individual that's completing the test, how they think. And it's about an hour and a half test online. So the good thing is that we haven't got to post anything out. We haven't got to send, you know, documents for completion for you to scan back or anything. It's an online test that would be facilitated by the agency, and we would consider the outcome of those tests. And, you know, hopefully, we would be in a position to make an offer. And that's when we would have a discussion around any options. So any particular GCSE or A-level options, and also things like EAL provision, English as an additional language. So we would be able to advise you about the type of provision that we could make available. And if your child or children had any special needs, any special requirements, if they had any learning difficulties or any medical needs, then obviously we would put you in touch with the relevant department to discuss that as well. And we could do that prior to registration, of course, to make sure it was the right fit. So it's a very straightforward procedure. But the only thing I would note, finally, before I sort of open it up for questions and a chat really, is we are very, very aware that we're all facing really, really uncertain times, and it's really challenging to try and plan for the future. I'm a mother myself, and you know, myself and my husband have been talking about it a lot about schooling, and we completely understand that, especially when you're sending your children abroad, you have lots of concerns, lots of questions, and lots of uncertainty. And obviously there are things that we can do to combat that in terms of, in the normal world, visits, or, you know, we can show you around virtually. You know, the headmaster and headmistress would be happy to give you an individual virtual tour, for example, and show you around. But actually, there is some information at the moment that we can't give. You know, there are some assurances that we can't make in terms of, for example, when our schools will reopen. So all I want to say, in case it's not obvious to the people sort of that, you know, I'm chatting to, is in the UK at the moment, we've been on a period of lockdown, and typically we have 3 weeks, you know, that then stagger. we are due to have an update from our government tomorrow on what the situation is going forward. And we're expecting that on Sunday, we will have an announcement from our government on our exit plan, should we say, how we're going to start getting back to some sort of normality and get out of the situation that we're in. So we are doing, as a school, everything in line with the government advice and government guidelines. And we are very fortunate that the southeast of England in particular is a very safe place and a very clean and airy place in the UK as well. And we haven't been, touch wood, drastically hit in the same way as some of the large cities in the UK. So we are very, very fortunate at Woodbridge School to not have been directly affected by the virus. But I just want to acknowledge that I know there'll be concerns and I know there'll be questions out there, and we will answer any questions that we can. We are hoping that the school will open in September physically. If the school doesn't open in September for any reason, which I mean, we don't anticipate that being the issue, then the UKVI, who are responsible for immigration and visas, for example, they have confirmed that pupils can start their learning online. So they can do remote learning, for example, for the first term if needs be. And then obviously people can come and join us face to face. So we are very much preparing for a September intake in whatever form that takes. And our remote learning has actually been going exceptionally well, much better than we could have hoped, given the climate. So I just wanted to acknowledge some of the concerns that you've probably got and let you know that we should all be in the UK in a better position to start advising about September next week, once we've had the latest announcement from our government. So I just wanted to run through those slides, and I'll open it back up to any questions that you've got. On that final slide, I've added our website. I've also added the admissions email address, but obviously you can be sent details of all of this. Also, we do have a virtual tour on the website, and if you click on the virtual tour, that will show you around all the facilities, all the buildings, and there's lots of annotated notes in there as well. So that would be something I'd certainly recommend that you do and that you can be guided through as well. So if you've got any questions, I am happy to answer them, but I would also encourage you to get in contact as soon as possible after this event. And Abby and myself and others will be happy to talk to you. And if you wanted to speak to our head prior to making an application, just to have a chat really about what's going on and what the plans are going to be for reopening, then she'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on, there's a little bit of echo. Is there an echo on your side? Or is that okay?
No, I can hear you okay.
Okay, perfect. So I guess we've got a few questions from our audience on the live. So maybe we can go through that first. The first question is from Winnie, asking how many students, how many international students do you have? What is the total percentage of British and international students? And maybe to elaborate on that as well, if you could tell us a percentage of boarders versus day students.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we've got around, to give you an idea of the school, the prep school and the senior school together, so from ages 4 up to 18, we've got about 750 pupils. About 550 of those are senior school, so year 7 upwards. And then of the 550 senior school, about 50 to 60 of those are boarding pupils. So I think we've got a handful, a few British boarders at the moment, and then the rest are from all over the world. So we also obviously have day pupils who are not British, who come from elsewhere or who have moved. So I would say we have around about 10% international pupils.
Okay, and with the 10% international students, how many international students, or how many of those are Chinese speaking?
So the majority of our boarders historically have been from China and Hong Kong. Obviously our numbers are being reviewed for September at the moment. We do sometimes have short-term boarders, for example. So many of our pupils will be with us for a couple of years, but we have some German pupils, for example, who typically come for 1 term or 2 terms, because the way their education system works, it allows for that. But I would say, you know, of the 50 to 60, say 50, of the 50 boarders perhaps that we have, I would say sort of 15 might be from China and Hong Kong.
Okay, thank you very much. And so during the weekends, do they have excursions, or are they able to go out to the local town maybe? Or,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
how old do they have to be for them to be able to go out?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, the town is very close walking distance away, and basically the families and the guardians, more importantly, would work very closely. So for international families, if you're wanting to send your child to the UK to a boarding school, you would need to organise, with support obviously, a guardian for your child, basically. So somebody that can come to the events at the school, somebody that can act as their advocate and your advocate, and somebody that can be contacted if in an emergency. And so they will typically be in a, you know, they're over 25 and they'll be close by to the, not round the corner necessarily, but within a certain mileage from the school. And so the guardians will be in very close contact with Mr. and Mrs. Pinio, you know, and the housemaster, all about excursions and things as well. But typically at the weekends, they try to do something sort of educational, something fun, something, you know, outdoors. We've got lots of beaches near us. We've got, you know, the cinema. There's all sorts of activities. As I said, we actually benefit, I think, from being the best part of the UK, because we have the coast, we have the rural areas, and we have the city areas all very close together within sort of an hour's radius. So I've grown up and lived in Suffolk all my life, really, and there's so much to do here and lots of outdoor activities.
Great. And so Giselle has said, could you elaborate more how the Fitzgerald Society is run? Is it only for gifted students?
I think, no, it depends on the particular family and the pupil, but essentially what we try to do is we obviously monitor not only pupils' outcomes and their outputs in terms of grades, should we say, and assessments, but also kind of their wants and their desires. And basically, alongside the family, people will be selected, you know, if they're looking like they would like to go on to study X at X institution, X university, and actually their grades seem to be sort of putting them in that direction. It's basically part of our ongoing service of support, essentially, for pupils. And even once a pupil has left us, even if they've been with us for a few months, they have access to all of our advice about their future, about their careers. They have that forevermore, and that's what we call kind of an old Woodbridgian. It basically means that they're anybody that has come to Woodbridge and have moved on, and that is available to people even after they've left. So it's not just for current pupils. So I can send further information specifically about the Fitzgerald Society as well, following on from this event, so you can read more about it and read more from the pupils themselves.
Okay, perfect. And so also from Giselle, she's asking, are there any notable alumni that's attended Woodbridge?
Okay. Do you know what? It's really going to frustrate me because we've got blame it on lockdown and not remembering names. We have got a lady who was a student of ours many years ago, and who's gone on to be a very exceptional actress. And she starred in The Kingsman alongside Colin Firth, as an example. And very frustratingly, I've forgotten her name because it's a very common name. But I can send through some information about that. But we definitely do have notable alumni, and a significant number, I think over 70% of our pupils do go on to sort of Russell Group universities, LSE and things like that. So both in terms of our academic outputs and in terms of what alumni go on to achieve. And then we've also got, we've got, for example, 2 equestrian teams that we're going to be representing the country. We have been a bit shook by the virus, sadly. We've got a skiing team, for example, that we're going to represent the country. So we've got a lot of people, current students, current pupils, who are achieving things on a national stage at the moment. Equestrian teams, skiing teams, lots of other teams. You know, we're very exceptional at rugby, and we've got running club. We've got a chess master at the school. That is like one of our claims to fame as well. Adam, he's a chess master. So if anybody's got an interest in chess, they can take lessons with him, which you know, will only help them in their chess playing game. So we've got lots of people doing great things.
Great. So you've got 2 equestrian teams. How many? How many people are in each team for the equestrian team?
It's a handful of people, but we've basically got stables about a 2-mile distance away from us. So they're not on the site. You know, we don't have stables on site, but it's very, very close by. And we've got a dry ski slope very close to us as well. So this is what I mean. We've got people are quite surprised with what we have at Woodbridge and in our very surrounding area, because people often associate kind of rural areas with, oh, there's not much going on. That's absolutely not the case. There's a lot going on, and the benefit is that we get to do it in lots of lovely green parkland space. So we're very fortunate to have lots of things around us.
Good. So Melody has asked, is there like a large proportion, what is the proportion of international students in year 10, and how many are Hong Kong students? Or students
okay.
from Hong Kong?
Yeah, in terms of actual year groups and numbers, I'd probably, if you wanted, you know, the information for September onwards, I'd probably get back to you on that, because there is a little bit of movement at the moment with kind of what year groups people are going into. But because we've got sort of 50 odd boarders at any one time, there will always only be a handful of pupils in each particular year group. So you might have quite a few Hong Kong students, but obviously you will have a few of those perhaps in different year groups. So our typical entry points are into year 9 and into year 12. So we typically recruit into year 7, 9 and 12. But we, in terms of boarders, because of the nature of boarding and the fact that people don't always stay at a school for the duration, we have a lot of movement. So people can come to us for a term or 2. Typically, we prefer people to come for a year or more and a few years, and they get more out of that. But yeah, certainly in terms of nationalities, we always have a fair number of Chinese and Hong Kong students in comparison to, say, our European students and those from, you know, other surrounding areas.
Okay, so because of the whole COVID-19 situation, you know, we're getting quite a lot of parents ask about PPEs and things like that. So one of the question is, will students be allowed to wear a mask on campus if the situation doesn't improve in September? And well, just to add on to that is what is the school doing to help with, like, you know, the virus control or social distancing? Do you have a policy on that? And wearing masks and, like, you know, PPEs, gloves, etc.
Yeah, and firstly, I'd just like to say that I completely empathise with that, because not only as a parent, but also I attended an agent fair, you know, before lockdown, so a couple of months back, and actually we had a lot of agencies there, we had a lot of guardian companies there, and a lot of people were raising this issue about some schools in the UK sort of being reluctant to allow masks and things to be worn. We had a conversation with our boarding community and our international communities, and at the time they didn't feel that they wanted to wear masks, so it was something that we approached, but we took the lead from them, you know, rather than telling people what to do. We had an open dialogue. I think obviously times have changed now, and the situation has worsened on a global scale. As I said, we would never be dismissive, and we would never sort of suggest that there was not a problem at Woodbridge or the surrounding areas. We are very, very fortunate to have not been as affected at all by the majority of the other parts of the United Kingdom. We as a school have been making PPE equipment and things for our local hospitals and our local hospices and things. So there's so much good things going on in the UK at the moment in terms of everybody coming together. And I don't think all of that always reaches the media. So I'd encourage you to look at our social media accounts just as an example of all the ways we're coming together and what we're doing. It's not necessarily for me to sort of indicate what any policy going forward would be, because that would be a conversation with senior team and with our head. But I can absolutely assure you that we are all very, very aware of our borders in particular, and in no way do we think, well, the borders make up a smaller majority, you know, than the day pupils, and therefore they don't get the same sort of attention. The opposite. We are wholly aware that if somebody is sending their child to the United Kingdom, and particularly to us, we have such a responsibility for that family. And that is why we have a British, you know, family with 2 of their own girls running the boarding house. So, you know, I don't think that we would be averse to anything that would make sure that people were safe. It's not to do with, and it's not to us anything to do with, it's not a cultural issue in that, oh, we're not going to allow boarders to wear masks because of how it would view or how it would appear. If the decision was ever to suggest that wearing masks, you know, wasn't appropriate, that would purely and only ever be down to any medical advice, because there's conflicting information at the moment about whether wearing masks is actually beneficial. But as long as it didn't hinder, as long as it wasn't causing any harm to anybody or it put anybody at any more of a risk, we would always do what we could to support the community, including our boarding community. And if that made people feel more comfortable and more at peace, absolutely we'd have that conversation with our boarders and their families. But as I said, in the timeline of the government at the moment is we're going to get an announcement, I hope tomorrow, on lockdown, and on Sunday our government is producing their very lengthy, no doubt, report on our plans going forward. And as a school, because that's what we've been waiting for, we will then come together and say, if we open in September, what does that look like? You know, will people keep their distance? Will we reduce the numbers in the boarding house, for example, so that there's only a certain number in each room? For example, instead of having a buffet style meal arrangement, will we be giving individual meals to people? So I can assure you those conversations are happening and will happen, but we're just waiting to the end of this weekend to see what our government announce.
Perfect. Okay, so I think so tomorrow.
Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So tomorrow is a
I can hear
lockdown. We're going to get an announcement on the lockdown if it's going to be eased up or not, and then on Sunday we're going to have like news on when the schools are going to be open. So I guess a lot of parents are seeing in the news as well that potentially schools might be open from the 1st of June. Do you have any kind of news on this?
No, I think from our perspective, the information that we're receiving, we don't have any insider knowledge, in truth, genuine truth. When we had to announce that we were closing and we went into lockdown, it was at the same time as everybody else. We don't get sort of a heads up. What we do get is an opportunity to have our say, an opportunity to give feedback on what we think is and isn't appropriate. All we're being told, and this is national, so this is not about Woodbridge School now, this is about all schools in the UK, is that any return to school would probably need to be phased because of the social distancing measures and how that might look. So it might be that certain year groups were sent back before others. It also might be, as simple examples, that instead of sharing items, you know, even pen and paper and things like that, all pupils will have their very own items that they use. It might be that certain activities are no longer permitted, so we would have to vary, whether it's sports or things like that, what it is that we're doing. So there is talk of potentially an opening up from June, but we don't have any more inside knowledge on that, and it's a conversation I've asked internally as well, particularly as a parent. You know, I'm juggling Woodbridge School opening as well as my son's school opening because he's too young to go there at the minute. But all I would say is that schools in the UK, many of them are still open for key workers' children. So Woodbridge School is still open for key worker children. Therefore, we are already quite experienced at having to put in place protocols and things to keep people safe. It would just need to be scaled up, obviously. We anticipate if schools were to go back, it wouldn't be a kind of open door policy. It would very much be some sort of staggered policy. And obviously we've got our summer holidays coming up in any event. So the decision would be on whether pupils would be allowed to go back and then have that chunk of time off, because there's been no talk at the minute about people going back over the school holidays. but we are also aware, I should say, that families are asking questions around deferrals or what if we wanted to join the following year. So obviously we would very much be happy to talk about recruitment for September 2021, but we would do whatever we can to reassure people that from September 2020 onwards, you know, all the right procedures and things would be in place. And as I said, as our part of the county is particularly I don't know, we just haven't been as badly hit perhaps as some of the bigger cities, and it's because of our parklands, our green open space, and the number of people, you know, that we have in Suffolk as a county and the surrounding regions. So we are very, very fortunate for that, but we certainly wouldn't take any chances.
Thank you very much. So last question before we finish for the day. So Melody has asked, if you're born in June 2007, would you go into year 9 or year 10? Now, you know, some schools are very strict on like their age policy, and they would look at the year the student is born, but some schools are not so strict, especially if the student's coming from, you know, countries where they start school later. Now, what is your stance on that, and would you take, you know, which year would you go into?
I couldn't give an answer on that, in terms of it wouldn't be sensible or appropriate for me to, because I'd need to talk to the particular family and particular pupil that we're talking about. But I can, in terms of our stance, we absolutely look at each pupil on a case-by-case basis, and we have had instances where somebody has, like you say, been on the cusp, should we say, and they've sort of started a bit earlier or a bit later into a different school group. So we do look at the whole picture. We'll look at the test results. They might have a conversation with our deputy head academic. It might be that we ask them to have an interview with our EAL team, and by interview I mean chat, conversation, you know, just so that they can sort of see at what level they're working and if there are going to be any struggles due to English language requirements, because it's not just about their age and academic ability, it's also about, you know, their language abilities and how they work. You know, different people learn in different ways. So absolutely would be open to having those conversations, and we are not strict on the nose. We look at the whole picture and make a you know, decision based on that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
For all our audiences for attending and asking the questions, and for Cara for sharing you know, information on the school, etc. So I guess now, if anyone's interested in Woodbridge School, they can contact us. We're in the UK, we're all working remotely because we're still in lockdown, but our Hong Kong office is open. So if you have any questions on UK education or Woodbridge School in particular, please email us or give us a call in our Hong Kong number. And if you find this information useful, please do share this information with your friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.